What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today's video, we are going to be talking about Ten of Swords Chapter 13, Marauders number 14 by Jerry Duggan, Benjamin Percy, and Stefano Caselli. And in this video, we are going to learn how Storm is going to respond to the advances of one of the original recipe for Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and why Wolverine is so salty with Brian Braddock, aka Captain Avalon. Not only that, but Wolverine is also going to make a huge mistake that is going to possibly damn the entire Krakoan side of the Contest of Swords. We're going to talk about all this and more right now, but first, wash your damn hands. And let's hit that intro.
Word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple eyes. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Before we get started, if you want to see more awesome comic book videos like this one, it only takes 2 clicks to become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers. Click.
Now, when we kick this issue off, basically what's going on here is that Queen Opal Luna Saturnine has arranged a sort of a taste of things to come style dinner, a kind of pre-Mortal Kombat style dinner that is was supposed to be an opportunity for the characters to get to know one another, to maybe parlay with each other before they actually have to kill one another, and also introduce the Arakans and the Krakoans with some of the other higher-ups in Otherworld, namely characters like Mad Jim Jaspers, who we've talked a lot about throughout these issues, at least as far as, you know, in the exposition pages of the story, but also at the same time, we've been seeing a little bit more of Mad Jim Jaspers, and we actually get to see a lot more of him here in this issue, oddly enough, and we even get a little piece towards the end that basically kind of talks about how he feels about the odds of the Krakoans versus the Arakans and all that sort of flair. But one of the things that happens in this book early on is when the Arakans meet up with the Krakoans, War happens to catch wind of Death speaking to Storm. And as he's introducing himself as Death, Storm interrupts him and says, "I know very well who you are." And War doesn't seem to enjoy the idea of Death wasting his time talking to what is essentially to her a dead woman. She even goes on to say that she can smell the fear on each of the mutants and that they're not going to be long for this earth. But Storm, in ways that kind of remind me of going back to the days when her and Callisto went to war with each other for the right to lead the Morlocks, Storm is unfazed by all of this. She actually says that you are mistaken. It must be something else that you smell, and Death even corrects War that yes, she is wrong. This mutant does not fear us. And War, who is, of course, as one would expect from someone whose head is literally made of fire, she is incredibly hot-headed and pissed off at the fact that Storm does not seem to respect her or fear her in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Storm even flippantly says that I thought that War would be more artful, but no, it's Death. You're going to be a problem, aren't you? Now, there's something that's brewing right now between Storm and Wolverine. Now, I know it has been teased that by the time we get to Wolverine number 7, they're going to reignite their relationship, but that's not what I'm here to talk about right now. I don't really care about whether they're screwing or not. I know a lot of people do. I guess that's where I'm weird, and I don't really care who's who in these damn comics. But Wolverine thinks Storm is trying to talk him out of doing something, but at the time, we don't really know quite what that is yet. But one thing is for certain, Storm tells him that no, she's not here to try and talk him out of it. What she is here to tell him is to not miss. Now, this kind of leads us to believe that he's going to try and make a move on the Arakans early, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Because right now, everybody's about to sit down. They're getting their seating arrangements. And it's here that we kind of get a little bit of banter, a little bit of back and forth, a little bit of comedic stuff. The Krakoans are starting to realize that of all the characters they're up against in the Arakans, the one who is probably going to pose the biggest threat to them is ur-pogg. Even with Storm asking Magic if he might have a soft spot, which Magic doesn't seem to understand if he does, but Wolverine is quick to point out that he's got plenty of soft spots. Just none are on the outside, which I want to say is probably leading to my theory that Wolverine is going to leap into ur-pogg's gullet and try and kill him from the inside out, which I would be here for, because if it fails, Wolverine dies and we get a new Wolverine, or he succeeds and I was right. But at the end of it all, the thing that has actually been up Wolverine's craw, he's a little pissed off that Brian Braddock didn't take an L for the team. Now you gotta remember, Brian Braddock is not a mutant. He is straight up human, but he is fighting alongside Krakoa because they have a shared interest, and more importantly, for his sister, Betsy Braddock, because they want to protect their homelands, and Brian Braddock understands that defending Krakoa is no different than defending his own realm of Avalon or the Earth itself. But Wolverine thinks that Brian Braddock has not been living up to his duties because he feels like Brian had a chance to save everybody. Queen Opal Luna Saturnine had one very specific thing that she really wanted in all the worlds, and that was Brian Braddock's. And Brian Braddock, being a married man, did not want to give it up because, once again, you gotta remember, married men don't cheat.
Message!
Now, granted, Wolverine has been drinking a lot throughout their stay in Otherworld, and he is quite lit, to say the least. But the thing is, he holds true to his words that he feels like Brian Braddock should have just done it. Which is kind of one of those things where I'm like, should he have? Because, I mean, would that really have fixed anything? I mean, yeah, she would have been happier, but would that really have changed her mind about everything she's been pissed off since Excalibur number 6 or 7? I just don't think so. But what Wolverine tries to explain to Brian Braddock is that he looks around the room at the other characters who are participating in this contest of swords, Cypher, Cable, Magic, and how none of them are married, and yet somehow they're all going to die. They're going to be fighting to the death, and they won't have anyone, well, not anyone yet that they're married to, waiting for them back home, and that Wolverine's not going to be watching their fights. He's going to be watching Captain Avalon's, but he wants to watch the guy that could have stopped all of this, because he is going to be waiting for him to die. And once again, I think Wolverine's being a little bit out of pocket here just because it's Wolverine. It's one of those situations where I'm like, dude, you're just being real short-sighted. She would have gotten Brian's D, and that would not have ended anything. She still would be on her bullshit because she's Saturnine. She's mercurial. You can't really just peg her and think that, oh, okay, I gave her what she wanted. We can go ahead and dip out. No, she probably still has other things that she wants and desires. We really don't know the full story on everything Saturnine wants. Now, once again, going back to the Krakoans, trying to size up the Arakans for any kind of an edge in the battle that's to come. One of the things that Magic and Gorgon have been doing is exactly that. They've been trying to figure out ways to get an edge on the original recipe for Horsemen, with Magic citing that War is right-handed and Gorgon agreeing. They still don't really know what to think of Pog or Pog, but Gorgon is quick to remind Magic that every beast has a softness beyond its armor, and Gorgon realizes that death favors his left side. Magic has even sussed out that the shrubbery on Redroot's body is actually hiding other eyes. This is actually even further backed up by the note that Jim Jaspers leads, where he basically talks about the fact that Redroot is actually someone he really wants to get a little bit closer to, because that character, much like Cypher, can speak so many different languages. He even states that if he could bottle up her abilities, he might consider a return to politics, and that he does expect the Arakans to sweep the entire tournament. This is just more lip service given to the fact that Redroot has a much wider skill set, a much more diverse skill set than we may have initially been led on to believe. But the one thing they can't seem to break down is the character of Iska, the Unbeaten. They even try a little game of trickery on Iska to try and figure out which side she favors, her left or her right side, even walking up and, trying to make simple conversation with her, something that she's not necessarily in the mood for. Even pointing out that she's not here to listen to any of their whining about how these fights won't be fair, and one would be forgiven if they thought that maybe they think the fight's not fair because the Arakans are supposedly more powerful. That's actually not the reason that she said that. The reason why she said that is because technically Arakko has more champions than Krakoa does. You see, Krakoa has 10 swords, but only 9 champions, because 2 of those swords are wielded by one person. Arakko doesn't have that affliction. But Iska does realize that Gorgon, at the very least, is very interesting and not like any of the other Krakoans she has encountered so far. So she's willing to entertain them, even if it's only for a little while. And even realizes that maybe even Magic might be up her alley. But it's right when they decide to offer her a toast, they decide to drop their glasses, one on the left side, one on the right side of Iska, to see which hand goes first. And oddly enough, it just so happens that both her hands move simultaneously and in ways that probably only the Flash could do. Her hands move at such a speed that you can't see them. And she even tells them if they wanted to know which side was her favorite, she could have just told them that she was ambidextrous. Something that I think we all probably could have guessed just by looking at Iska and knowing how powerful of a warrior she is. And she even offers them their glasses back, dropping them just the same before they can reach them. But magic, being magic of course, being skilled in both sorcery, sword fighting, and a laundry list of other things, including creating portals that can go to pretty much anywhere, she opens a portal that as the glasses drop through it, literally appear right above them, and they're able to catch them with pretty much no issue whatsoever, much less not spilling a drop the same way that Iska didn't. Now, granted, neither one of them really learned much about the other that's going to help them in the battle to come, but one thing we do know is that Iska is definitely entertained by the idea of battling magic and Gorgon. And Gorgon is definitely certain that she is going to need to be taken out first, and that her sword is probably going to be the one that does them all in if they don't. Where things get more interesting though is when Storm is met again by Death of the Arakans, and Cable even points out to her that Death has been eyeballing her the entire evening. He is basically thirsting after Storm, and Storm approaches Death and offers him an opportunity at a dance. Now, once again, this is one of those situations where typically in comics where we get a cover of something where it's like, oh, a dance with Death, you know, they're showing Storm and Death having this interesting ballroom style dance with one another, and you think to yourself, oh, this is just metaphor. This is something that's just meant to sell a cover and, you know, be kind of cute and maybe give you some veiled representation of something that may or may not happen in this issue. It's actually not the case. They do actually have a dance with each other. And one of the things that Death brings up is that the sword bearers that accompany Storm have tasted death many times and in many ways, but not Storm. But Storm informs him that he's wrong. She actually has tasted death in some ways, but just not in the way that Death is thinking. She has avoided death pretty much her entire publication history. She has pretty much done so because growing up on the streets of Cairo, working under the Shadow King, fighting for the lives of characters like Angel, you know, battling for the fate of the Morlocks, leading the X-Men for the majority of her time being a character in the Marvel Comics universe. All of these things have shaped her and made her capable of swaying death, basically allowing her to manipulate it and control it in ways that other people don't think about, allowing her to fight another day. And probably in one of the lines is one of the most shady lines that Storm could ever possibly give a character with the power levels of Death, a man who, for all intents and purposes, as far as we know, his mutant power is the eyes of death. He can literally look at you and kill you. And Storm literally tells him that I neither fear nor desire you, but I do know you, and this is as close as I will allow you. And this is, in fact, Storm's literal dance with death. This was basically a test. This was basically her getting as close as she possibly can, letting her enemy know that she isn't going to be bothered by them. She saw that card of death, and she knows what that card means. She knows that that card does not necessarily mean her actual blood death. No, it means that she is going to face a change, and Storm is willing to face that change head on, regardless of what the consequences might be. Now, we've talked off and on about Wolverine in this issue. Now, the thing that's actually going to get Wolverine in some real serious trouble is the fact that not only has he been getting pissy with Brian Braddock, not only has he been getting pissy with Betsy Braddock, but he is now finally directing his attention towards Opal Luna Saturnine. He's upset. He's basically letting her know that he knows that Brian Braddock could have ended this anytime he wanted to. They're all playing in some twisted, demented game of death at Saturnine's pleasure, and Logan is not the least bit happy about it, especially when you think about the fact that if they die in Otherworld, even though they can be resurrected once they die, they're not going to be the same person, so it is literally a true death in that aspect. Wolverine is about to do something that is really foolish, and a part of me kind of wonders if this is because of something that Ward did. Now, we do see at a point that Ward does something. She taints, in some way poisons Wolverine's food, though we never see Wolverine actually eat any of it. Because at the point that she poisons his food, he immediately stands up. Now, I don't know if this is something he actually had to ingest or if this is just something he had to smell that would affect him in some way, but whatever it is, he is sick and tired of hearing anything that Opal Luna Saturnine has to say. And he pops both sets of claws and runs them directly through Queen Saturnine's ribcage. And you know, we normally get those little quotes at the very beginning of these Dawn of X comics, where you know, usually it's a character giving us a little taste, a quote that basically gives us an idea of what's to come in the issue. This time we actually get it at the end of the issue, with Wolverine saying that, "I'll tell you what joins us all. Everything dies if you can figure out how to kill it." I don't think this is going to go the way Wolverine thinks. I don't think Opal Luna Saturnine can actually be killed so simply. I mean, it is to say that technically she probably can die, considering the fact that you know, her vassals, her servants, were so concerned for her health when the Dryadori messenger came to the Starlight Citadel and was infected by Pestilence's arrow. Yes, she probably can die. She probably can be harmed, but something tells me that this ain't gonna go exactly the way anyone actually thinks it will. And we won't know for sure until we get Marauders number 15, Excalibur number 14, and Wolverine number 7 next week. But that said, man, this actually was a pretty wild issue. I thought that they did a really good job setting up these characters, kind of letting them get to interact with one another prior to the combat, which I think probably was the best way to go, because when you think about it, had they just taken these characters and thrown them in together in a combat and they had never once spoken a word to each other, I think that actually would have cheapened matters a little bit. I think it's actually a good thing that they allowed these characters to actually interact with one another, talk to one another, even if it's terse, even if it's not pleasant, but allow them the opportunity to speak so that they can, you know, kind of set up some more character development moments down the road when these characters actually have to fight each other. That said, I do want to say this issue was good. I liked this issue a lot, and I'm actually kind of curious to see how it all goes down, because it seems like Marauders number 15 is where we're finally going to start to see the battle go down. Or who knows, we may get another layover into that because of the whole thing with Opal Luna Saturnine. Of course, something else happens in this issue that makes me want to go back to Stasis and rethink something that I said earlier. I didn't really think about it at the time, but there's a scene, and it seems like it's probably a throwaway scene. It's probably not much. It's probably much ado about nothing. But there's a point in this comic where Cypher encounters Bay the Blood Moon. And now it's starting to make me wonder if that Two of Cups we saw in Stasis number 1, if that was actually the person that Cypher was sharing a glass with, was possibly Bay. They have a really odd interaction where, you know, Cypher just simply says hey to him, and Bay basically snaps at him, telling him to avert his eyes, even calling him a soft boy. But something tells me that they're gonna wind up talking again later. I don't know, maybe, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But regardless of all that, I do want to remind you guys, this Saturday, the 7th at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, I'm going to be on the Nerd901 Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/Nerd901. And we are going to be doing an extra live stream from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. to benefit Le Bonheur Children's Hospital. This is a big fundraiser, and for those of you who have been with me within the last year, you probably remember when I did my fundraiser for St. Jude Children's Hospital. It's gonna be something very similar, only this time we're gonna be doing a long stream to do this, to raise this money so we can help these kids out and try and make their lives at least somewhat more normal in these very abnormal times. You know, these kids who are afflicted by diseases, viruses, and ailments that no child should have to deal with, and to make sure that the parents of these children don't have to go broke to save their kids. Because at the end of the day, you know, despite the fact that we talk about all these comic books and superheroes and people who have extraordinary powers that can do extraordinary things, I actually think that this is something that is far more extraordinary than anything I could ever break down in a comic book. Because that, at the end of the day, is what heroes do. They help those who aren't able to help themselves. But that said, come by, check it out. I'll be on when we open up the stream at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 2 hours before the Blerd Cave starts. And I'll also be back on after the Blerd Cave ends. And like I said, we'll be playing all sorts of awesome games. We'll be playing things like Among Us, Phasmophobia, Dead by Daylight, Fortnite, Apex Legends, Fall Guys, Mario Kart, Second Extinction, and a laundry list of other games, I promise you. It's gonna be really fun. There's gonna be a lot of great personalities on there. Some you may have seen before on my channel, others you may not have seen before on my channel. And if you're familiar with any of the things I've done before with Extra Life in the past, then you probably already know what faces you'll be looking forward to seeing. That said, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and let me know what you thought about Marauders number 14. How do you feel about Storm and the shade that she threw at death and war? And more importantly, what do you think ur-pogg's actual weakness is? And do you think Gorgon and Magic would actually be able to figure out how to beat Iska the Unbeaten. Wash your damn hands and sound off in the comments.
So hey, you made it to the end of the video. Awesome for you. If you enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, I don't see how you didn't, do me a favor. Hulk smash that like button. And if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you click subscribe so you can become one of Earth's mightiest subscribers. And tap that bell so you know when I post up. Also, feel free to go check out my Patreon, where if you chuck in a buck, you can get early access to most of my videos up to a week early. And if you have time, make sure you swing by nerd901.com, where you can find more of my content as well as other amazing stuff. Anyways, until next time, I love you 3000 plus Ultra!